Everybody, thanks for joining us here today. This is Nicole with Topaz, and today's session is about complicating masking made simple using Topaz ReMask. We're going to be taking a look at some of the most technical types of masking here today, mostly transparencies, things like smoke and veils and other transparent objects like that where there's a lot of negative space and see-through areas, and working with some of the more technical tools that we have within ReMask that make these tasks much easier and much faster than you would see in other programs. So this first image here is our first image that we're going to be covering. I haven't done a smoke image for a while, but this is an image of a forest fire, and I really love the image, but I wanted to take the sky itself and take the blue out and make it a little bit more orange and maybe a little bit more gray, less vibrant blue and more towards matching the color of the smoke in near the ground here, kind of this orangey grayish color. With a lot of programs, it would be really hard to go in and just take the smoke and not have a lot of this blue color bleed into the edges of the smoke. But with ReMask, we have advanced technology that you really don't even need to use some of the advanced tools within ReMask to work with an image like this. Some of the updates to ReMask 5 are on the are not necessarily seen by us. It's more advanced stuff going on in the background that makes it compatible with high resolution screens and things like that. But we do have some awesome new background replacement tools that we're going to be taking a look at, not in this particular image, but if you see ReMask 5 up here, that's why. We're using the latest version. When you open up ReMask, you're going to see that it just fills with this green color, which is your keep color. ReMask is based off of a tri-map technology, green for keep, red for cut, and blue where you want your image, or where you want ReMask to do the work for you, where you want it to realize this is where I'm cutting out. When you're dealing with a smoke image like this, where you have this very translucent, airy type of line, you really want to take advantage of that blue compute color. So when I come in with this image, the first thing that I want to do is just come in and take a really large blue brush here. By default, the blue brush is going to be selected, and you want to just kind of go along the edge of the smoke where the sky meets the smoke, and you want to make sure to cover the entire smoky area with that blue color. Sometimes when you're looking at just the green overlay like this, it can be a little bit difficult to see the transition between when you have these really airy type of lines. So one thing that I like to do in this type of image is to go over to my split preview mode, click on that, and view the original image next to my tri-map. Let's come over here to the right, just to make sure that I am covering all of that smoky area, all that area that I want it to remove that background of blue, but keep the smoke, make sure that whole thing is covered. And so I'm actually going to paint on this the original image as opposed to the tri-map area, just since I see it a little bit better, just making sure that all that smoke has been covered. Once I get over here up to the top left, I have a really large section here that has a lot of airiness to it, so I want to make sure to tell the program, hey, I want you to look at all of this because this is all transparent here. I'm going to come down to my fill bucket once I've made my lines and just fill in this entire green area of smoke with the blue. So this is my big compute line. And you can make a large compute line like this with these types of images and really trust that ReMask is going to remove that background for you and not have you do a lot of work. So at this point, now that we've got that compute area, this is where we want the program to think. We need to tell ReMask which area to cut and which area to keep. I want to keep my foreground and cut my sky, so I'm going to come to my fill buckets down here below my brushes, go to my fill red bucket and click on the two areas that I would like to cut. And at this point I'm ready to go. I'm going to go ahead and press my compute mask. The three things you need are a red area, a green area, and a blue area whenever you're working with ReMask. Once you have those areas, you can come down to the Compute Mask and make your initial mask, and there you can refine it. So let's go ahead and press this Compute Mask. It's going to give me a mask. Because I'm in the split preview mode, it didn't automatically go into my mask mode, so I'm going to come over here to the top right and press my mask mode to check out my mask. And it created a really lovely, soft edge, translucent mask. I can tell that already. But don't be fooled by just the mask. I always say this. Definitely check out the keep view, which tells you what you've kept and what's being cut. And you can see that the lines will most likely need a little bit of refinement, especially in translucent areas like this where you're going to have a lot of color bleed. A lot of the blue is going to be attached to that white smoke on the very edges of the pixels. So I'm going to go to my keep mode over here on the left, and you can see that we have a lot of this translucency coming through on the smoky line, which is lovely. But it looks pretty blue still. To check that, I'm going to come down to my background area down here at the very bottom of my interface on the lower left, and this is a new section within ReMask 5. We do have the ability to check colors within, check solid color backgrounds within ReMask 4 as well. It's a little tri-circle thing over here on the top right next to the views. But for now, in ReMask 5, we have this solid color choice. You just click on that. It's going to let you select your new color. The color that I'm wanting to kind of put in the background is going to be a little bit more orangey like we have right now. In addition, a little bit more gray. So I'm going to come over and maybe just select this kind of orangey gray color and press OK. And I'll see that updated over here on the left. And I can definitely tell now with this background color that I have a lot of this blue-edged color bleed still happening within my smoke. And that's going to be an issue that you run into in any masking when you're working with these very delicate masks like this. Within ReMask, we have something that will tackle this very simply, and that's our recovery slider. It's located within our color area, and the color adjustments, basically this is going to recover your foreground color and remove background color. So as you take this up, just keep an eye out on this upper left area and the whole line actually. You'll start to see that that blue tinge is removed and a nice solid smoky color is recovered. And it was as simple as that to actually get smoke, realistic smoke cut out of my image. Now I can actually replace my background if I want to within ReMask, but because I'm working within Photoshop and I have a little bit more leeway of compositing or manipulating the colors of both my foreground and background, I'm going to go ahead and go back into Photoshop, press OK. Okay, now I can come in and actually add in a background that's going to be more along the lines of what I was looking for. For me, actually, let's just go ahead and keep this blue sky since all we really wanted was a color adjustment. So I'll just take this background below and maybe add a color filter or something, or a photo filter, or work with my hue and saturation just to take my saturation down, maybe take my lightness up, and then maybe add a photo filter or change my color balance. Let's work with the photo filter for this one. I'm just affecting my background here and nothing else. And come in and change the density there. Maybe even come in and choose the color of the area that I wanted. Get a little bit more gray, say OK. And there we go. I have been able to just adjust my background while removing some of that really heavy blue tinge over here on the left that we had in that original image. It's before and after, and was able to quickly do the selective adjustment with a particularly technical type of masking that usually takes a while. Replacing the backgrounds or being able to selectively adjust the backgrounds versus the foregrounds through a wedding veil is very difficult because of the transparency of the wedding veil. So usually what you'll find, most programs easily will outline a subject or the couple, but then when it comes to the wedding veil itself, you can't get a realistic background replacement without having some of this color that is attached to this wedding veil, this dark color in this example, come through. With ReMask, by using some of our more advanced tools like our transparency brushes, you're easily able to separate that foreground color of that white, bright white veil versus that background color and mask that veil quite successfully in most cases. So for this, I'm going to go right back into Topaz ReMask 5, press OK. And this is going to be a very similar workflow in that I will just outline my couple here. Actually, let's get a little bit more exact with this blue. And I'm going to take a look at my original image here as well because I'm having trouble seeing the edge of her hand against that bright area. There are several areas within this particular image that are difficult, where his hair meets the branches, where her hand meets this really bright, light background. These are the types of areas that most masking tools are going to start to have trouble with. And ReMask is one of those. If it's a white pixel on a white background, ReMask is not going to be able to detect the edge because it's white on white. But if there's even a slight difference between the foreground and background that you're trying to cut or separate, majority of the time, even if it's very slight, if you let ReMask do the majority of the work for you and just make sure to cover that area that needs to be investigated with that blue brush, will majority of the time do a really great job for you. Now when you come over here to the veil is where you'll want to make sure and cover the whole transparent area. Anything where you really see that background color seeping through the veil with that blue color. So I covered that entire edge there with the blue. I'm going to continue working on the hands and going around. And then when I come and meet my veil again, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to increase my brush size and make sure that the actual veil itself is covered. As I move down the veil, you can increase your brush size because the entire transparent area, just like with the smoke, is going to be covered in blue. We're going to fill this entire thing with blue. So I'm just going along the hard edge of her bodice here and making sure that the whole veil area is filled with this blue. Then when I get to the solid portion of the veil over here, I'm going to not be as exact. We'll just pull that right there. And now I have this really large area of green within my blue outline, and I'm just going to go to my fill bucket and fill that whole thing with blue. We'll go back to my blue brush here and continue outlining the rest of the subject. Just getting this negative space between their arms, dress, down here on the bottom right, over on the left now. Just going up the sides here, and this is an area that's probably going to be a little bit troublesome as well. The shadows right up against his dark pants and vest. So we'll have to tackle all that with the tools that we have at hand, but I should be able to do a fairly good job here. Let me go ahead and zoom out. And now I'm going to go to my red fill bucket. Within ReMask, if you're not familiar with the shortcut keys, please familiarize yourself with them. We have several different types of brushes, color range brushes, transparency brushes, fill buckets, and as you go, you like to switch a lot with the tools, and it's really nice to be able to just come and click on the keyboard. So for example, for my red fill bucket, it is just the keystroke T. It will turn my red fill bucket, and I can just come around here and do that real quick, and I don't have to take my mouse over here back to the other side. Now that I have filled my areas with the different colors to tell ReMask what I want to do, I need to be a little bit more specific about this transparent area. This is a very difficult type of masking, so we have a specific tool for you, and that's the transparency brush set. So it's over here on the right hand side underneath our brushes tab, and basically you tell the transparency tool what color you want to cut, what color you want to keep, and then you paint onto the transparency with the brush that is provided, and it's going to just kind of remember what color you wanted to keep and what color you wanted to cut, and then you can compute your initial mask. It's important with this transparency brush set that you realize, or that you know, the best quality you're going to get out of these brushes happens prior to your initial compute. So what will happen is a lot of users of ReMask will say, okay, I've done my initial outline, and now I'm going to press compute mask, and now I'm going to go back to my transparency brushes. This is not the best use of the transparency brush set. Do the transparency brushes prior to your compute, and then don't use them again after your initial compute, because that will give you the best results. I'm going to go to my single view here and zoom in, say about 100. I'll zoom out just a touch. There we go. And now that I see my transparent veil just a little bit easier, I'll click on my transparency brush, come over here to the right, and I see that I have a green eyedropper now. With the green eyedropper, you want to select the most solid color of the keep color. So in this case, let's go ahead and go to our original. I'm just clicking the original view because I can see my colors a little bit better. In this case, it's not even any of the colors that are actually in the transparency. It's the color up here on her shoulder, that white, bright color. So I'm going to click on that, and I'll see that my foreground color swatch over here on the left-hand side in the brush transparency menu has changed to white. And now as I scroll back into the interface and onto the image, my eyedropper, or my little color dropper, has turned to red. Now I need to select the color to cut, and that is not going to be any of the color seen within the transparency itself, because this is like a veiled dark color, but it's not the real color that's underneath this veil. The real color is over here on the right, this real shadowy area. So I'm going to click that shadowy area on the right, and you'll see again in the transparent brush menu over here that the background color, or the cut color, is now black. And so that lets you know that you've selected the correct colors. As I scroll back in, you'll see that you have a black brush. This is the only time you'll see a black brush within the ReMask brush set. That is your transparency brush. I turned back to my tri-matte mode because it's important when you're using your black brush to only use that black brush on the purple compute color, or the blue compute color. I always say purple or blue. It looks both to me. Sorry for any confusion there. But as you paint just on that color, you'll know that you have correctly chosen good transparency colors if you see mostly a yellow dot sequence starting here, like we see. So I'm keeping that black brush within the transparent, or within the transparency, which is within that blue compute color, and just filling that whole thing in. And I only really need to do a very small selection there. I don't need to keep going in and doing it again. I only needed to do it once. It's usually best if you only do it once. And now that I have that, I'm going to press compute mask. And there you go. That's a really great transparent mask right off the bat for that particular veil. Now there are definitely some problem areas, especially in the areas that I had thought we might have some problems over here in his shoulder, in her hand, on her shoulder. Let's go ahead and take a look at the keep just to see what's going on. All right, so in the keep mode, we definitely start to see some issues along our mask, but I don't see it well enough, so I'm going to change my solid color. There we go. And let's scroll out. All right, after scrolling out, that really beautiful transparent mask that I thought I had, it's not really all that transparent. I'm seeing a lot of shadow within her veil. This is where the recovery foreground color slider comes in really, really well. As I take this to the right, you'll start to see that that background color of that dark shadow starts to separate itself from the foreground color of the white veil. And the white veil really gets to stand out, and the dark color disappears. Let me show you that one more time. This is an amazing slider for transparent objects like this. I'm going to go into my split screen mode and take a look at my mask and my original image next to it. And I'm going to scroll in so I can really see the edges of my mask and then work with the refinement of these edges. Now that the mask or the veil itself looks pretty good, I'm going to focus on the rest of the image. You can really start to see where there might be some issues within the mask area when you start to see this kind of transparent or gray color happening, not quite white, not quite black, that gray color happening amongst it. If you look at your keep mode, you can see that it actually shows a little transparency in those areas, and you might not want that. So what I like to do is to go into my primary brushes, which is now a magic brush. The magic brush, a lot of people ask what that means. It happens by default. Basically, it means that once you've pressed your initial compute mask, your primary brush set has turned into your magic brushes, which means that as you continue to work, it will continue to update with the results. So it basically will just give you live updates. So as you click, you'll start to see that it just fills out those edges of the mask. I'm working over here on the mask side right now, and just switching back and forth between my red and my green, my keep and my cut brushes by using my Q and W keystrokes, and just cleaning up these edges of the mask. Any areas where I start to see a little bit of ghosting, where it's not clean lines, I like to just clean those areas up. So we worked on the hands, did a pretty good job there. You can change your brush size if you're not aware with your bracket keys on your keyboard. So using your bracket keys along with the shortcut keys, you can really get quite quick about some of the work that you do here. I'm going to go into my quad view here to really check out some things. So I'm going to look at my trimap on the top left, my mask on the top right, my keep mode on the top or on the lower right, and my original image on the lower left, just to get a good view of all of these types of views. And I'm just going to click what you can. One thing I love about ReMask is you can click on any of these views. So if you can't tell in the keep mode if it's actually something that's supposed to be kept, you can look in your original mode and work over there. And if you can't tell in your original mode if it's a good mask, you can come up to your mask mode and work there. So you have just a lot of options to work with. So I'm just working with his hair right now, and we did run into those issues with the background shadows, but again, easily cleaned up by these magic brushes. I'm actually going to get rid of some of that hair, not a problem. There we go. And coming down, now we run into the shoulder area where you start to see a major issue with the mask because it's bleeding into the background, which is a very similar color in that shadow. So you just want to make sure you tell the program which areas you want to keep, which areas you want to cut, which is the background, and it's just going to clean up that line where it's having issues quite quickly. Same idea with her hand, which is having some trouble with that really bright glare of highlights in the background off of that gate. So again, I'm just going through that same process of getting pretty close into the mask and telling the program, okay, this is the area I want to keep, her hand, his shoulder, but I don't want to keep this wall or this super glary area in the back. So these more technical cutouts like this take a little bit more time, but they give the quality and results that you're looking for a lot quicker than you might find in a more traditional masking tool. And then using the blend options that we either have within ReMask now or within your host program, you can easily blend it into a new background or make a really precise selective adjustment without much effort. All right, I'm coming down now to the side where I think I'm going to see, yes, I still see some issues here. I'm going to come over to the original image because I can tell a little bit more of what I want to keep, and I'm just going to go down and keep that area, switch to my cut brush, and continue working. If you are unfamiliar with the shortcut keys within ReMask, ReMask 4, ReMask 5, whichever version, or ReMask 3, whichever version you like to use the most, check out the shortcut key page within the user guide. You can access your user guide by going to Menu, User's Guide. It's going to pull that user's guide up for you, and it's usually towards the back of the user's guide where you can find the shortcut keys. With ReMask 5, we've added a lot more shortcut keys, and I feel a lot more usability through that shortcut key menu, so I'm really excited about that because I'm a huge fan of the shortcut keys to make the process that much quicker. And I keep going up to the navigator mode here on the top left, but we also have a pan mode. You just click on your space bar and your hand will come up, your pan hand, and you don't even have to go up to that top left to move around. So shortcut keys really help out as far as the usability and the quick factor of creating a precise mask like this. And so I'm just going along those edges, continuing, and the program did an awesome job here. I don't really have any work to do here, but I have quite a bit of weird stuff happening along this edge on her arm, so I'm going to go ahead and make sure that we clean that up. There we go. Make sure I cleaned the interior of their arms up. Lovely. And get any sort of issue that might be going on here. Okay, I see some issues through the transparency onto the bodice of the dress, so I'm just going to take my keep right along that solid line there and fill that out. That works good. Same idea here. And this is a very precise selection. If I was just doing a selective adjustment where I just wanted to take my background and foreground and be able to adjust those a little bit more easily, I wouldn't have to go through so much refinement. However, if I want to replace the background totally like I do with this particular example, then I like to get fairly precise like this. Now, once I'm happy with everything, which I really am at this point, I think this has done a great job of giving us a really nice cutout. I'm going to say OK and get back into Photoshop. Let's take a look. Here is our cutout. So very nice cutout. I did go ahead and already select a background image here. It was a similar image, but removing some of those distracting elements within the original image that I saw. So this background area just felt a little too dark, and there were areas that just weren't great. So what I did was take a similar background image with similar light, and you can just drop that below the layer that you just cut out, and you'll see that background come through. And look how beautiful that background just came through on that veil. Here's before and after. Show you that one more time, before and after. I also added a little bit of a blur to the background to give it a just blur that up a little bit more, but you can unblur. One tip about when you're actually replacing backgrounds or completely changing the background like we did here, making sure that you bring in a similar light that your original had is really important. So within this original image, we had the light shining kind of behind them and to the left of us, and so her back is in shadow while his back looks to be lit, and that's a similar light to what I found here. And I kind of looked at the trees to decide where the light was coming from, and you can see that the light is definitely coming from the back of these trees because we see the front of the trees are way in shadow, just like her within the original. So the light matches. Now at this point I would actually go in and do a little bit more work on matching the overall light of the scene. So maybe with them I would add a photo filter or some sort of warming filter or change the brightness and color. So we can do that really quickly. I'll just do that through levels. Maybe get just a little bit brighter, and I want to make that a clipping mask. I'm just going to right click on my mask and say create clipping mask so it only affects my cutout versus the background itself, and now I can just work with them, maybe brighten them up just a touch. And now also go in and do a quick filter or something like that, just something to try to match the light a little bit more. I'm going to go ahead and go more yellow versus orange, matching the light of the grass a little bit. Oops, I didn't mean to do that. Let's go back here. I'll say OK here, and now I'm going to create a clipping mask just for my couple, so you can see here's before. They're much cooler here. The temperature of the light is much cooler than it is in the background, and now I'm able to add a little bit more warmth to the couple and kind of match that light that's happening in the background. So again, here's the original image. Here's the cutout we made. Here's the background we placed it on. And here are the quick adjustments we made within Photoshop to match the light that's hitting them with the light that's hitting the background. And now this is something that I would take a little bit more time to match and compose a little bit more, but I believe that this gives a good example of the steps that we take when trying to create more realistic background replacements like this with a more technical subject. If you have any questions, you can contact us at webinars@topazlabs.com or just reply to that email that gets sent out to you in about an hour. And I hope to see you at the next upcoming webinars. Have a great day, everybody. Bye-bye.